Hello, YouTube. This is my first attempt at a book review. The book in question being Yukio Mishima's The Sailor Who Fell from Grace with the Sea. It's over here. Oh, not sure. Ah, fuck. Pardon my French. I want to review this book because it's only the second Japanese book I've ever read. First one being Murakami's Wind Up Bird Chronicle, and since then since reading that book, I haven't really touched anything, any Japanese or any Eastern literature, and I just thought it would be a good idea to read it, and I really liked it. I couldn't find a lot of reviews on it, except for PewDiePie, who suggested it on YouTube, and it says it's one of his favorite books, and Mishima's one of his favorite writers. But it's a very, very good book. It's very short and fairly easy to read. Not very complicated language, but it's actually very well written. I would like to say almost like a sparse, direct style reminiscent of Hemingway, but very lyrical, and I don't know, in a way that might be kind of like a haiku, but I haven't really read haiku, so I don't know. So basically, the novel's about this young boy who kind of is part of this gang with his fellow classmates or schoolmates who have a very, I guess, like disturbing ideology of what their view of the world is. They reject the kind of society they grew up in the sense that they think that their the parents, teachers, politicians, the government, and every adult is giving them a very false reality. They're kind of rejecting that idea of growing up, having to obey certain rules, and this is actually very easily summarized in the first few pages. At 13, Noboru, a young kid, was convinced of his own genius and certain that life consisted of a few signals and decisions. The death took root at the moment of birth. A man's only recourse thereafter was to water and tend it. That propagation was a fiction. Consequently, society was a fiction too. That fathers and teachers, by virtue of being fathers and teachers, were guilty of grievous sin. Therefore, his own father's death, when he was 8, had been a happy incident, something to be proud of. Now, this is just like a very short passage that kind of describes how this group of kids, what their ideology is. It's kind of disturbing, and there's actually some more pages that describes what these kids believe in, but that's not the point. So this young boy, 13-year-old Noboru, grows up with his mom. His dad died when he was younger, and he discovers a small peephole in his desk, in his one of his drawers, which you can fit through, and he can spawn his mom. And the first page in the book, it's not a major spoiler, he finds his mom bringing home a sailor and has sex, sees his mom have sex with him, and it's it's kind of disturbing because he's not watching because he's like a curious kid and wants to see what sex is. The way it's described in the book, it seems like what sex is like, but there's something about the way Mishima describes Noboru's understanding of what's going on in front of him as something transcendent, and the sailor who his mom sleeps with is described as like embodying a certain kind of ideal. Um, not sure what that ideal is, but it might have to do with something, some kind of masculine ideal of like being committed to the sea, not obeying the laws of the land, transcending and rejecting the rules of society. And I don't want to give too many details of the plots away. I think this is a book that must be enjoyed um, just through reading alone. I just want to say why I like it so much. Um, First of all, I think I'm interested in this. I think the main reason I want to read this and why I'm interested in it is that it takes place in post-war Japan, and things were very interesting. And it's a very interesting time period at that time. Japan's going through a lot of changes. A lot of countries in the West went through changes in after World War II. But this is I know almost nothing about what happened to East, Far East, and I'm really surprised to see. I knew Japan was a highly developed country before and after the war, but I was really ignorant of what kind of society people lived in at the time. I've watched a few Japanese movies, a few Korean movies, but not enough to really know, what's in the hearts and minds of people. Um, so the mom, her name is Fusako. Um Kind of owns she owns a store that imports goods, materials, clothes, ties, and all these accessories from the West. And sells them to Japanese people who can afford them. These are expensive stuff from the West, and she's kind of represented as being the westernized or westernizing Japan after World War II. And this is something Mishima himself like railed against. He was very disappointed how westernized Japan was becoming after World War II. A sailor whose name is Yuji. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Um, he is kind of like an embodiment of like the older ancient. Not, he's the embodiment of traditional Japan, uh, like pre-World War and pre-World War One and Two, and the kind of Japan that abided by the samurai code, the kind of Japan that was actually Mishima was yearning Japan would return to. And I think I don't know, Noboru and his gang, his kids, they I don't know what they represent, but I think they just represent maybe the chaos, the kind of confusion Japanese society was going at that time. Because I think in any post-war society, there's like a sense of loss of confusion. I'm from Lebanon, and I'm growing up in a post-war country, and I can really relate to that, which is why I like post-war novels. Um, so like to keep it short, I don't want to spend too much time on this. I don't want to give too much of a plot away. Um, the key point is that Noboru and the gang, there's like a leader, the chief, and like they're ranked in different numbers, like number one, number two, number three, number four. Um, Start noticing, Fusako being courted by Ryuji, and Noboru brings attention to his gang that this man embodies their ideal of like the sailor that um, kind of embodies like a masculine man, the ideal man, one that is the man that just like doesn't have his life set in stone anywhere. That just like drifts around the world and goes on adventures and rejects the idea of settling down, having a family, raising kids, having an 8 to 5 job, having a traditional life that is set up by society. And this is what I really find interesting, in that Ryuji on the outside is that man, but on the inside, he's kind of like an average dull man who just followed his own path in life. But there are some descriptions of his inner life that show that he's like a sentimental guy that's actually yearning for what everyone else wants in life. Yeah, and I really don't want to give too much of the book away, because it's really a big pleasure to read it on your own. But when he was young, Ryuji was portrayed as having this need of having glory, because he felt like it was different from anybody else, because he's more introverted, he's not understood, he doesn't like small talk. But as he got older, as he is in his 30s and he's courting Fusako, he's realizing, if he keeps on sailing, he's going to be like a middle-aged guy with nowhere to go. And he ends up realizing all he wants is a family, and he ends up, kind of falling for Fusako in a sentimental way, and ends up wanting to become his husband, her husband, and more and more Noboru and the gang realize that he kind of gave up his values, which were not really there in the first place. I'm making it sound as not as interesting as it is in the book, but I just think that it's, first of all, a deeply disturbing book, and because it reminds a bit of, like, especially like these gang of kids reminds me a bit of the kids from Lord of the Flies. And second of all, I just think that it's apart from being well written, it is a very interesting reflection of the kind of competing values and traditions in society after major event, and I don't really have any rigid belief system, but it makes me realize how much little we know about, like, how certain historical events, or it affect our value system, but also that, like, when we want to say things that I don't really believe what society says is right and wrong, we're not that special. There's like a lot of kids that reject norms, and at the end of the day, no one cares what you think. You have to get a job and feed yourself eventually in some way, one way or another. But anyway, this book made me want to read more Japanese literature. It made me want to read more of Mishima's work. It made me just want to know more about Japanese culture in general. Yeah, well, that's it. If you guys read this and enjoy it, or just read in general, keep reading.